Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Lethal Venom podcast. This is a podcast where I talk about anything I want with the honest to God truth, no lies told. And for today, we have a special guest with us. We have Mr. Justin Shaw with us, and he's going to be explaining a little bit about his backstory and telling us about his book that has come out, Sourcery 101. So, Justin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to be here, there, everywhere. Magic of the internet.
So, if you could just tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I grew up in out here in Arizona, Scottsdale. Uh, you know, growing up in my household was, we had things, things really weren't too big of an issue. It was kind of emotional stuff that was lacking in my family. So I grew up just kind of in an emotion vacuum. It was just me and my mom most of the time, and she was struggling with her own problems and her bad anxiety and depression, and so we mostly kept to ourselves a lot. Most of my memories growing up were just in my room, and she was in her room, and we had our room. We'd do things together. It wasn't just like that. But if we were in the home, we were in our separate units, and that's just how things worked. But for a more sensitive, emotional guy like me, I needed more of that. So that led just to a lot of addictions and drugs and stealing and all kinds of shenanigans in my teens and 20s. Kind of turned my life into a dumpster fire. So yeah, I kind of turned things around, and it was all for a meaning and purpose, and I got through things, and I wrote a book. So that's kind of what we're here to discuss, but it's just that's it's about my journey, but mostly it's a map to illumination, like a boulevard to illumination. And there's some events that happened that I'll happily discuss that kind of just awoke me and wanted to get out there and help people heal more and thrive and live the lives they're meant to live. And I kind of got a map to that now. So it's fun, and I'm out there just doing whatever I can to get it out.
And for your book, it's called Sorcery 101. It's 13 Rungs to a Higher Elevation of Consciousness. Was the book challenging to write with everything that's happened?
It was, I mean, it was a challenge in the beginning, but after I committed to it, it all just kind of there's a field of energy that can be tapped to and at any time, and it's the unified field, and it's a field full of all the information since the beginning of time. And that is what I kind of tapped into to write the book. So it was not difficult. It really I once I made a decision to do it, it kind of tapped it, and through my subconscious, through my humor, through my pop culture references, I'm able to explain kind of this force, this healing force that unifies everything, and put it into a book form. So it was really exciting, but it definitely was not hard. It all kind of came out very, very easily, and just kind of, I just committed to it. And I was able to take out a 401k, and because I'm from this job, I'm not going to want to retire from it. So everything's about risk, but I was able to really throw down a lot of time and effort and intention on getting this. So it was something I look forward to every day. So certainly it was daunting at times, but it really came out great and so easy. So I wouldn't say it was yes and no. It was hard to commit to it, but then once I committed, and once I sat down and did stuff every day, it would just the hardest part was the sitting down. Like, okay, I'm going to sit down and write. That was the hardest part. Because after I sat down and made the commitment to do that, everything just came. So yes and no. It was difficult.
I was reading over the intro of your book, and I came across where you put the Sorcerer's Creed, and it's 13 rules, kind of like the commandments. I would say
Mm.
kind of similar to the Ten Commandments. And I just like how you have listed all the creeds. Out of all the 13, which one do you think is the most profound one to you?
Yeah, it's hard to choose. There's 13 in there, and yeah, there's 10 commandments. I don't like to think of it in more terms of command. There's so many religion, and this is the main thing is this is more spirituality and religion. There's very different schools of thought. Religion is taught, spirituality is found. Religion divides, spirituality unites. So there's a big difference between the two. And like, so don't let's say commandments, because I'm not like commanding anyone in law, but they're extremely useful guidelines, right? Like, and so it's hard to pick just one, but like the one I think I like the most is approach every obstacle and endeavor you encounter with the confidence of a 5-year-old wearing a Superman cape. That's one that I really like, because I remember being 5 years old, and I remember thinking I could fly. Like, I had that kind of confidence when you put on a Superman cape. That's the kind of confidence I had at 5 years old. Like, in my mind, I was able to jump off the couch and take off. And if I can approach life, anything in life, especially obstacles and things, that with that kind of confidence, I think it really is a it has been a game changer. But I would say that's one that really stuck out to me. But there's all kinds in there for sure.
I like the third one that you've put here. It says, I pledge to seek out knowledge. I am enrolled in a full-time school called Life. Each day in school, I will take advantage and learn something new. I've basically put that into a thing ever since I've graduated. I've took every day one step at a time. And it's like school, they sometimes throw stuff at you, life throws stuff at you that's unexpectedly, and you just have to try to embrace it and learn from it and learn your mistakes. So I really appreciate that you've put all these up at the forefront. Going back to talking about growing up, it said that you had battled addiction and you had a lot of trauma growing up. What was the hardest part about trying to get help and trying to heal yourself from that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is a good thing to talk about, because for me it was very hard to decipher, because my household, it wasn't there's capital T trauma, and then there's lowercase t trauma. There's two very then they're very different types. So capital T trauma is more what I experienced in adulthood. I experienced a series of things. My mother died, my sister died, I had a close childhood friend die. I was attacked in the face by a large dog and almost took out my eye. And I had instances of my fiance coming and just took away our infant son and moved across the country, and I haven't seen him for 2.5 years. So I have these big T trauma things that happen in adulthood, but childhood is good to talk about, because there's a lot of us out there that don't understand small T trauma. That's a slow burn kind of trauma, of like emotional neglect, or even just things that like parenting that just not the best. You'll say something to someone and not really mean it, but not understand that this child is taking everything in and as fact.
Hmm.
One disparaging thing said by just one time by a parent, because of who said it and how old they are, they take it in, and now it's a belief forever.
Yeah.
And so mine was this lower T kind of slow burn trauma, and that's what I had to understand. And that took a long time to understand, because I wondered why I was such a screw up for a long time. It's like, I had a good childhood, like my childhood was fine, and then you get into it, and you're like, oh, what wasn't it was not fine at all. But you don't know any difference. Like, and it wasn't, my mom certainly never physically abused me, and I wasn't sexually abused or anything. So it was like, what happened? And well, like, if you emotional neglect can even be worse than abuse sometimes. So and for me, that's what happened. So recognizing that there was something wrong, it was obvious something was wrong because of all my symptoms, anxiety and depression, and ADD, and all these addictions, and just complete misery. So it's obvious there's something wrong. But then the second step is like figuring out what it is. And it took a while. It took a while for me to figure out that, oh, childhood wasn't that great, and there's big reasons behind it. So it took some digging.
It says that you were formerly a stand-up comedian. Did comedy kind of help tell your story in a lighthearted way?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of comedy in the book, and there's a lot of pop culture and comedy. And I think that's what made Jesus such an effective teacher, right? Like, he was able to take this force that I'm trying to explain in my book and trying to explain it, like, people of his time would understand, and they really got it because he had really good parables. So I took that example and brought in technology and pop culture and humor and trying to use that to explain some of this whole idea of this source energy. So humor was a big part, and I'm a stand-up comedian. I was, and so that really worked in to everything about the book. It made it really funny, and I wanted to recycle between laugh, think, feel. Like if I just recycle those three things over and over throughout the whole book, I got to keep people's attention. There's shattered concentration of Generation TikTok, so I got to keep their attention. So the only way to do that was to kind of laugh, think, feel. If as long as you're one of those three things cycled throughout the whole book, then I'm keeping the attention. So I was sure to get things to sound funny and to be funny and to make references that people will understand and make it relatable, because spirituality should be fun.
You always have to do like pop culture references now, and I do appreciate that you do use humor and you also use pop culture metaphors and kind of use slang in your book to help kind of get your point across to this generation. Is over the years, has it gotten more challenging trying to tell your story and try to get people to understand it since we all live in a different age and it seems like life is just every so often changing?
Yeah, I mean it's easy for me now. I mean, certainly because I haven't been at this for very long. The book's been out about 3 months, and so it's very in the very beginning stages. I'm not. This is all new to me. I'm just kind of I'm the book is the career seed, and I'm planting it and seeing what's going to grow out of it. So I have, but the more I kind of do these interviews and meet people like you, like the more the easier things get and the more kind of things come to me. So it really it hasn't been that hard. I enjoy doing it, and I enjoy getting out there, and I know there's just a lot of people struggling, and people seem to talk about it seems to be hard for people to talk about the fact that they're struggling, which that shouldn't be. Like I've said, oh, you're so strong to talk about this stuff, and it's just like I guess, but at the same time, like I don't see it as a big deal. I don't see it as courageous. It's just like this is what I have to do. I have to get this stuff out because like getting it out, is getting it out of me and helping someone else and pulling them kind of in. So yeah, it's pretty second nature now.
When I was growing up, it was kind of taboo talking about drugs and sex and as well as mental health struggles because I don't think a lot of people really dealt with it more. I think a lot of people more deal with it now, and it's kind of become more of a normalcy in conversation. It's easier brought up, and people are a little bit more willing to talk about it, which growing up in the 2000s as a kid, they always parents then try to keep your child protected from all this stuff. They try to shield that from them. They don't want their child to get exposed to all these conversations and topics because it's just very mature conversation and it's not something a kid should learn. So for parents that want to, is there a way that parents can tell these kind of topics to their kid in a more kind of kid-friendly way?
Yeah, and I think there's a couple things to that. This is a good question. So there is an age at which you have to. So this is what happened with me. Nothing was discussed ever. No drugs or sex or how I was feeling or emotions or even guiding of my life, what I want to do with my. I mean, there's just nothing. Nothing was discussed. It was just day by. What do you want for dinner? That's pretty much. What do you want to do for dinner? Like that's the guiding. And so um there is a point at which it needs to be discussed, and people don't really understand that point. And I think it's definitely the ending, for me. It would be the ending of elementary school, going into seventh grade. It's time. It is definitely time. You can put it off, and you could maybe. I mean, it depends on, sometimes elementary schools are a little bit more adult in certain areas and everything, and you need to talk about them earlier. Do that. Um, you know, but at least by middle school, and there has to be an open conversation. And and the biggest thing is to not say don't do drugs, because that's what happened to me, and I'm a rebel, and it was like, well, you're just because you're telling me to do them, I'm gonna go the opposite route. So, and it's just like that, if I tell you don't think of elephants, elephants is what comes to mind. So, don't do drugs. This is not a good way to approach it at all. So the best way is to kind of sit a kid down and all risky behaviors and things, and show routes and the realities of what can happen. And like to say we're living in this multiverse where choices we make, are shifting our timelines by every choice we make, and every choice we make depends on the energy that we're in. So that's why energy is so important. But you have to sit down and tell kids, like, here's drugs, here's the good side, here's the pros, now here's the cons, and here's what can happen, in your life where you can alter these timelines. And the easiest for me is this, I could definitely be in jail or dead, or there are timelines where that's happened, and I'm pulling in like the best possible timeline. And so living in that energy of who you want to be and where you want to go is what pulls it towards you. So kids need to know that they are in charge of their destinies at all times, and whatever energy that they're living in is what they're going to pull in. So, but and it can't be, you know, don't do it, this is bad. There has to be, you have to have the pro, like, why do people do drugs? Well, it make you feel good, and it's for a time being, and there's medicinal purposes for some of them. All that needs to be brought to the table. And then if a child like has a screw up or something just like you wouldn't wish they would do, like, coming home drunk and they just drove the car, and like, sit them down, you need to, there has to be repercussions for that. But there shouldn't be, all this jump on punishment, and like, there needs to be an open discussion of why, that why they decided to go that route, why they did that route. And then that kind of, you can process better from a kid, and they'll talk about why and where they went wrong. And then they can kind of think about the next time that happens. And life is about learning. We're learning lessons. So it's important when a lesson needs to be taught that it's obvious to a child there's a lesson here, and we need to figure this out. So the whole jumping in corporal punishment, and that's not the route to go. I mean, like if it is something like kid comes home, drunk, and they just drove, well, keys need to be taken away. There needs to be repercussions, but there can't be this like angry punishment, because they already know they screwed up. So it's talking about it in an open way. Why did you do this? Is there things you want to change? So on and so forth. So it just, be cool. Be cool is the best way to do it.
You know, it's so different now for kids growing up because used to growing up, I always got in trouble for stuff. It was not nothing serious, but I remember, which I'm from the South, and I always had to go outside and pick a limb off a tree. I have to come inside, get whooped on the butt for it, and like all these stuff. And I was like you earlier when you said about what was for dinner. That's about how our household was too. Is I was like, as long as I was watching SpongeBob and Tom and Jerry, I was fine. I was like, I'm
Yep.
fine with those two things. And then it was always a thing of, do you want to go outside? Do you want to swim? Do you want to read? And that's about all the conversation I had. But I really, I think that kids need to be open to it. But I don't know how young it would be. I'm trying to think when I had to have been like 12 or 13 once I had started knowing, because our school was real taboo about it. I didn't really learn that till I was 13, 14. But some kids in my class probably knew it when they were 5 because that's
Yeah.
from where I come from. But during this whole process, who have been some of your biggest inspirations and who have you looked up to the most?
Yeah, I've had a lot of really good kind of spiritual leaders, and like I've looked up to in the out in the world, and they're all, these amazing people that I've borrowed from, and I'm creating something new. So there's Greg Braden and Deepak Chopra. I like to call myself a little bit Deepak, a little bit Tupac, like, because that's the two sides of us. We're all two sides, and that's the best way I can explain that. And it is the truth. But it's Dr. Joe Dispenza, Bruce Lipton, Teresa Bullard. Like these are all like fascinating. Wayne Dyer. Like these are all fascinating people that have this extremely intelligent people that have educated that also go this route of the kind of the quantum realm and just proving that belief is everything. And that's what a lot of these people kind of preach is this belief in yourself and how powerful that is, that you can truly be the narrator of your life. You can just Morgan Freeman your way through each day and just kind of tell it the direction to go, and it'll go. And so it's this see what's his name? Goddard, Neville Goddard. He's another one I really enjoy. But I'm always trying to read books and new things, and I love enjoying that bringing in the quantum realm, because that's kind of proof where like we have an effect on things. There's the observer effect and how it can change energy in from particles into waves. And so an energy can be, matter, or it can just be waves based on observation, us looking. And so if you're observing your future, you're now pulling it towards you. So that's what I've been doing, like I'm still very new in this, and things take time, like the how and when, of these things. It takes time for things to come to fruition. But I love looking out and reading people that are aware of this field of energy and are aware of belief and understand how important a role we play in our lives. So I'm sure there's tons of people I'm missing, but that's a few of people that I've really gravitated towards. Yeah.
In your book, you recognize and mention that we're all a sorcerer, that we are all our own sorcerer. What makes us one?
It's your belief. It's already there. It just needs to be uncovered. That's why I say the sorcerer is there in everyone, and it is there, and it needs to be uncovered. But the number one thing to become a sorcerer is to first heal the trauma. So your trauma sits right here. And when we have trauma, whether it be childhood trauma, adult trauma, everyone's got something. And it just sits in your frontal lobe, and your frontal lobe is what makes us human. So it's where our judgment, impulse control, personality, all these things just sit in our frontal. That's all a frontal lobe. And trauma, that's what it affects. It just clouds the frontal lobe. So when I say everyone's got the sorcerer in them, you need to first clear that up so that you can now have this contact with source energy. Once your trauma starts getting cleared up, now you start to heal. Now you can change your healing and move into thriving. And that's what really brings your superpowers to light, and the whole route of the sorcerer. And it's good to know that my sorcery, it's spelled differently. It is source, SOURCCRRY, spell check generation, uh, to distance itself from, the typical Gandalf Merlin sorcery. There's no cauldrons or hooded robes needed for my kind of sorcery. But it's that source energy, and we can connect to it. Source energy is like explaining water to a fish. So think about that. It'd be difficult. It's like, how would you explain water to a fish? Well, it surrounds you. You live because of it. You breathe because of it. You're here because of water. Source energy is that same thing. It is everywhere, and is for everyone to connect to. And there is a map to be able to use it and connect to it. There's a way to do it, and that's what I created, is this map. And so, but that's the number one thing. We're all sorcerers. It's just a matter of clearing up this trauma. And the medical community doesn't understand trauma or chronic illness. This is where all chronic disease comes from, is from this clouded trauma zone. All chronic disease, whether it be, autoimmune disorders or addiction or anxiety, depression, ADD, it's all from the clouded frontal lobe. It's trauma. So the medical community will never have an answer for it, nor do they want an answer because a cured individual's lines no one's pockets, right? So they don't want to cure chronic illness or cure trauma because it keeps people coming back in. All they can do is manage symptoms, and that's what they do. They look at the symptoms and manage it, and that's what it's about. Manage the symptoms. There's no thing for curing, and what we have to do to cure it, because it's not like, doctors are not bad, of course. If I fall off a roof and break my arm and there's a bone sticking out of my arm, that's not a good time for acupuncture. Meditation is not going to do much for my arm in that moment. So, but after you take it to a surgeon and they place it and they do the surgery and they stitch it up, it is the body itself that heals itself. So what made the body heals the body. And so this system I designed is to set your emotional slash spiritual bone and allow the body to heal itself. Otherwise, trauma can never be healed because it's like if you broke your arm and didn't go see a doctor. It's not going to heal. It's never going to heal right, and it's always going to be it's always going to be sore and bad. And you might eventually lose function of that arm. Like who know, all kinds of stuff can happen, um, because it wasn't set. The bone wasn't set to heal, so now it's healing incorrectly, and that's what's happening with trauma. Is we don't understand as a society how to set the emotional, spiritual bone and let the body heal itself. So that's what I've designed is a way to do that and for people to heal from trauma and have their own experiences and bliss attack. I have them every once and I still have them, but it's an attack where I get that it's like if you replace panic with love. It's like a panic attack if you replace panic with love. And this feeling will just overcome me once in a while. And this is when I get like close visions of things like I'm gonna do for the future, and just all these truths come to me. That's when airplane mode is turned off. Like once you turn off airplane mode, and we're all in airplane mode, but I know how to turn it off. And so there's a way to turn it off. And once it's off airplane mode, now you can get all these amazing signals, and source can now speak to you because you've had airplane mode on the whole time. You don't know it, but we do. So yeah, that's what I'm out to do with this whole thing is turn off, get people to turn off their airplane mode. That's the goal.
I love this quote that you've used in your book. It's like one of the it's the first quote you'll see when you open it. It's from David Bohm. He's a physicist, and what you've declared the OG sorcerer, and he said, "Reality is what we take to be true. What we take to be true is what we believe. What we believe is based on our perceptions. What we perceive depends on what we look for. What we look for depends on what we think. What we think depends on what we perceive. What we perceive determines what we believe. What we believe determines what we take to be true, and what we take to be true is our reality." That's a very powerful quote. I just wanted to share that. Um, what advice do you have for people that are struggling with trauma and don't know how to the proper way to open up? What advice do you have for them?
Well, it can be a tough thing. Certainly, if there's people out there that are interested in the book and can't afford it, I will gladly send you a book. I have my email sorcerer13@gmail. So I have ebooks and PDF. If people are interested in that, just email me and I will get you a free copy of the book. But and I'm also offering these kind of spiritual Sherpa sessions where, like if we can talk for a little bit, and it's like therapy, but it's a lot more fun and a lot more effective. So there's those two. But in terms of keeping it as cheap as possible, there's a free copy of the book, but it's talking is the biggest thing. So, and you can talk to anybody. You don't need money for that. There's people around. There's help. Even if it's not an immediate help, but there's lines you can call. There's all kinds of things. Just start investigating yourself, investigating the world. Get curious. If you get curious about the world, a lot of things can change. So, it is, the journey is the destination. So, what you're going through is part of the story, but it is not the end to the story. If you're not winning, it's not over. It's like that, if you start seeing yourself in a real like superhero movie, every superhero movie, it goes by the hero's journey, the Joseph Campbell hero's journey. And there's feels separated and away from everything, and then they go through some trials and tribulations, and it's tough, and it's hard, but without that what that the hero character goes through in that time period, it would make for a really boring movie. Like without any adversity, it's boring. Like we're not here for, it's not a boring video game, it's a fun one. And so yeah, it's about overcoming challenges. But if those challenges weren't there, then you wouldn't have anything to feel good about overcoming. So it's perspective. Your perspective is a huge thing. And the way you look at things. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And so perspective is the biggest thing I can tell people to going through stuff, is that the faith through the storm, even the storm might last a long time, but behind the clouds, the sun is still shining. You just have to look at yourself as the sky, and everything you're going through is passing weather. Healing is out there. You can reset your emotional, spiritual bone, and things will absolutely change. So hope, that's the biggest thing I would say to people.
For people that want to check you out more and find some more information about your book, where else can they go to find you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. I've been off of social media for 4 years. I just got back on Instagram like a couple months ago. So it's sorcerer underscore 13 on Instagram. That's the only one I have right now. And my email for if you want a free copy of the book is sorcerer13 at Gmail if you don't have Instagram, or you can hit me up on there. Or Awaken the Sorcerer, spelled with a U, and all those are spelled with U's. Awakenthesorcerer.com is the website. It's also on like Amazon and stuff like that to order. But um, again, if you want a signed copy, I can just email me. That's easy to do too. But yeah, everything's starting out. We'll see where it goes. It's gonna be really fun to see. But this is the beginning. But that's where you can reach out and reach me. And if you just want to talk, like I don't charge for emails or anything. If you're struggling and like want to talk about it, like shoot me an email. It's all good. Whatever.
Well, Justin, I appreciate you being on today. And of course, for all my listeners, I'll put all of his information and contact info in the description box where you can come back and look at it if you want to come back at a later time. But all of his information will be down there. His book is also available now, and he'll is on Amazon. I'll also put a link down there for that as well. Justin, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much. It was great.
Again, thank you so much to Justin for being on the show today. I really appreciated our conversation that we had. To keep updated on the podcast and just learn a little bit about behind the scenes, you're more than welcome to check me out on social media. Instagram and TikTok is Lethal Venom Podcast, as well as Facebook. My Facebook is Noah's Podcast. You'll find updates about this podcast as well as my other two, Music Talks and Southern Reads. All three of the podcasts are available on wherever you get your podcasts from: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Pandora, YouTube. It's everywhere. I really appreciate you all for listening and tuning in. If you have any ideas for episodes or have any other things or comments or concerns, feel free to email me, lethalvenompod@gmail.com. As always, I really appreciate you all for listening and tuning into this week's episode of Lethal Venom. Hope y'all have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch y'all on the next episode.